we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latex gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Phil J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Hit that like button, comment, subscribe, just like every other podcast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show on an early edition. Yesterday, I didn't get to the book until late. Me and family went to go see Superman. I give it about a 6, 7, somewhere around there. But we saw Superman, got home a little bit later than I anticipated. And by the time I got done reading the book, there wasn't enough time to go live. And so we're going live today to go over the final part in the James Patterson, the Idaho 4 book. I read through it. There's some interesting facts that are in there that I think that I can kind of point to some other stuff that maybe has been said and before and maybe not confirmed. And maybe now we can find that there is possible valid sources. First, I want to say thank you to Dee for gifting a Drunk Turkey Show membership. And thank you, TCF, for becoming for a member for 5 months now. Thank you guys. You guys rock. You guys are amazing. All righty. So before we get into it, we do have a response from our president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. This is off his Truth Social platforms, kind of like Twitter. And he wrote or posted, Bryan Kohberger, who was responsible in Idaho for the deaths of 4 wonderful young souls, has made a plea bargain deal in order to avoid the death penalty. These were vicious murders with so many questions left unanswered. While life imprisonment is tough, it's certainly better than receiving the death penalty. But before sentencing, I hope the judge makes Kohberger, at minimum, explain why he did these horrible murders. There are no explanations. There is nothing. People were shocked that he was able to plea bargain, but the judge should make him explain what happened. Thank you for your attention on this matter. Now, I love Judge Hippler. You know, I think he's very fair. I think he's been strict, and I think he's one of the reasons why, in my opinion, the trial finally started to get a move on. There was a scheduled date, and I think that had this plea bargain not go down, I think it would have gone on as planned, you know, and to the dismay and to the reluctancy of the defense team. But, you know, the last time that we saw Hippler, he mentioned that he wasn't going to listen to the voicemails of those that contacted, wasn't going to read the emails. I wonder if he hears this statement from the president, the highest person in government when it comes to the United States. So it's no longer just the victim's family member that is upset about this. This is the chief of the United States here. This is the president. I know this is going to make some folks mad, mostly pro-burgers, but it is what it is. I would want him to explain. I think this is something that I think everybody wants. Everybody wants to know why he did this. When did he choose them? I mean, the victim's family members want to know that. Now, maybe not all the victim's family members. I think there are a few who are pleased with the fact that he made a plea and he's going to spend the rest of his life behind jail or behind bars, and he's never going to see or breathe fresh air, free air ever again. You know, some folks are content with that, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's justice for some. For others, not so much. And I think that at bare minimum, for those that want to know, because at the end of the day, if you're a family member and you don't want to know, why Bryan Kohberger did whatever he did or whatever, why he committed the murders, you can always just turn it off, right? There's no off button for not knowing. You know what I'm saying? You can tune away from those things. You can turn the TV off. You can choose not to read the articles. You can choose all those things, but there's no choice to get out of not getting information, right? And so for those that want the information, the family members that do, I 100% stand by them. And I think that, excuse me, guys. I just think that this was I think a lot of people's minds were on this. And I think that, I don't know if it's going to end up making a difference. It's the 24th when the sentencing is happening. I highly doubt they're going to force him to say anything, but this is a move in the right direction. Maybe, perhaps, you never know. They did slay it for the 23rd and the 24th, just in case. So maybe there might be something after all. I hope so. But this from our president. Thank you, President, for tuning in and putting your comments. I mean, I'm not saying he's tuning in to me, but tuning in into of what's going on in Idaho and the injustice that some of the family members feel and why. All righty. So without further ado, I'm going to pull this down and let's get into the book. Let's talk more. This is going to be part 6, Warpath, out of the James Patterson, the Idaho 4, an American Tragedy. Again, I'm not going to read the entire thing verbatim or anything like that. I'm just going to highlight the important parts. I do think that it's important for those that want to read it to not get, everything spoiled, so to speak. 1 second, guys. Allergies in San Antonio are no joke, guys. All righty. In chapter 115, this is on January 5th, 2023. They bring Kohberger up from his cell into the tiny Latah County courtroom. He doesn't turn to look at anyone. His only animated gestures are directed towards Ann Taylor, his public defender. Moscow is scarcely unfamiliar territory for Taylor, and she attended the University of Idaho's law school. Goes on to say it's almost impossible to find somebody who didn't in the area. In fact, the man who gave Taylor her first job is none other than Bill Thompson. So she, they work together, which is interesting because there seemed at certain points to be this hostility between them, to the point where Judge Hippler had to make a notion that you guys got to be civil. Now, it didn't seem like there was something that happened in Judge Hippler's courtroom. Obviously, it was some of the back and forth that was going on in Judge's courtroom. And I think Hippler kind of saw that and he was like, hey, we're not going to deal with that. But yeah, it appears that Ann Taylor got her start because of Bill Thompson, or with Bill Thompson. Goes on to say Judge Megan Marshall, the Moscow magistrate, is another part of Cozy U of I law graduate circle. She reads out the charges against Kohberger. Okay, and then it goes on to say that Steve read Brent Payne's probable cause. The highlight is clearly DNA and found on the snap of the sheath. That's what his sources in the local FBI are telling him. DNA is the gold standard of evidence. But Payne's affidavit says the investigators got to Kohberger's DNA through his dad, so the defense could look for loopholes there, and Steve is worried. Will the DNA evidence hold up? Steve plans to do his own research on how long DNA can last there. I'm told that a version of the K-bar has a special material on the button, and it's copper-based, and that dramatically speeds up the deterioration of the DNA. Tests have shown sometimes less than 24 hours to a max of 7 days, he said. Which is one of the things that I think that like the Kohbergers didn't understand, because they would look at that and say, oh, because of the material that it's made out of, it degrades fast. It couldn't have been Bryan Kohberger's. And I said to myself, no, that's not what it means. Or that they meant that they thought maybe perhaps somebody planted it. And I was like, no, that's not what it means. What it means is that Bryan Kohberger came in contact with that knife sheath relatively early, soon before the murders, before he left it behind. And the reason I could say that is because had he touched something, or it got transferred, or he touched somebody else, or even himself handled it, and it'd been a week or a month or X amount of time before then, there's a good chance that that DNA would not have survived. So the fact that they were able to pick it up and collect it, and then determine that, you know, the amount was there, the DNA was there, and they were able to create a profile, should speak volumes of how quickly they were working, and the fact that it's unlikely that they were like, all right, a couple weeks later or whatever, they're like, oh man, the University of Idaho is pressuring us that we don't, you know, I found a killer. We need to just blame anybody. And, you know, obviously, instead of looking at all the criminals in their database, some that probably have more of a background that would make you believe that they're the killers, they decided to frame Bryan Kohberger, a PhD student in the neighboring town, in which nobody had no idea who he was in Moscow for the most part. So, you know, those things kind of just don't make sense. But I'll go on. It goes on to say, and what about the lack of obvious link between Kohberger and the victims? Kohberger wasn't part of Kaylee's circle. Steve wants to protect Kaylee, be her mouthpiece, now that she's unable to speak for herself. But Judge Marshall just made that harder. Ahead of Kohberger's extradition from Pennsylvania, Judge Marshall imposed a gag order stopping the police, investigators, and attorneys, anyone connected to the investigation, for talking to the media. But a few days later, without public process or rationale, she refines the gag order to include lawyers for the victims' family members and witnesses. Steve doesn't like this one bit. His attorneys, Shannon Gray and 30 news organizations, filed an appeal. So this is interesting. She files the gag order, and then later on adds, without any rhyme or reason, family members of the attorney, or the attorney of the family members. It sounds like somebody asked for that. Sounds like somebody went up to her and said, can you include that? And it sounds like, to me at least, from this book, that Fry had some issues with what Steve was saying and things of that nature. I wouldn't be surprised if the chief of police went to a magistrate and just said, hey, can you add these folks? Because they're spurting out information that we don't want them to, right? I think that's quite possible. And I think that's, in my opinion, at least, what most likely happened there. Kohberger's defense can say anything in the courtroom, and Steve is helpless to speak against it. And that's true. That was one of the issues, is that Steve and anybody couldn't really, the prosecution really didn't have back and forth when it came to what defense was saying. Now, I assume that was just because there's a time for that, right? The time is during the actual trial for them to go back and forth and those things. But it did seem like the prosecution was a little weak, because they wouldn't challenge anything. They wouldn't cross-examine anybody that the defense brought up. And if they did, it was very small amount of questions. It just kind of definitely seemed one-sided, especially in Judge's courtroom. Let's see. Now that Kohberger has been arrested, they repurposed the Goncalves family page from field tips to become more of a supportive online community. And let's see. Next page is Rochester, New York, January 5th, 2023. It's the mention of the knife sheath Kohberger left behind that convinces Christine Cameron that Bryan Kohberger and Papa Rogers are one and the same. And that's basically because Papa Rogers said that he believes that the knife sheath was left behind. Troy, Idaho, February of 2023. He's been out in the snow for hours. In the 2 months since Kohberger's arrest, Chief Fry has used this quiet time to think and heal. Though even out here on his land, he's never quite able to forget those insane 6 weeks between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve. Thanks to the gag order, he's no longer pressured to speak to the press. Now, remember, Fry did mention something about when it was referring to his, according to the book as well, when they referred to his first press conference, he said that some of the media questions were kind of because of the pressure of the Goncalves family and them going and doing the rounds on the media and stuff. This is why I think I wouldn't be surprised if Fry was the one that was kind of behind adding the victim's lawyers to the gag order, because now he no longer is pressured to speak to the media. He washed his hands of it, so to speak. At work, he's continuing with his investigation, closely looking at Kohberger's digital footprint and the victims to see if there's an intersect, see if they can find a motive. While there's a page on Reddit called Justice for Kohberger, the chief follows for humor and for irritation. That's weird. So he was a follower on Reddit. But that should tell you some things, right? That should tell you some things that if he was following them on Reddit, he was probably in there in the Reddit forums and Facebook forums and stuff like that before Kohberger got arrested and seeing if maybe there was some sort of hints there. Let's see. Let's continue. The chief adores his wife, 32 years. When she speaks, she's kind of the E.F. Hunton. He said. So this Reddit nonsense irks him greatly. So he's being bothered, Chief Fry is, according to his wife, from the Reddit stuff. One conspiracy theorist even concluded that the chief was the murderer and Kohberger was framed as a scapegoat. Fry looks forward to setting the record straight. Now, I remember that there was somebody that came forward saying that Fry was going to get arrested and he had something to do with it, that everybody in the house was either transsexual or trans or homosexual or bisexual of some sort. I don't remember the name of the person that came out saying this, but they had this whole spew. They went on a couple of other channels. We never talked about it here because we just felt like it was complete nonsense. So we never even brought it up, but I believe that's what they're referring to. All right, let's see. And the guy he also emailed the guy from Florida that said this will be the next John Benet Ramsey case. Turned around and congratulated him. So the guy who emailed him about it being the John Benet Ramsey case, once the probable cause affidavit came out, he had said before the PCA came out, I hope you got the right guy. Now he's saying you may have got the right guy. After all the back and forth, Fry was curious about this critic. Tell me about yourself, Fry said. He learned that the guy was 70 and had been in the oil business in South Dakota before retiring and moved to Florida and has 3 kids. Fry goes on to say it's crazy that, people that disagree might have more in common than they think. Fry wishes that Steve Goncalves felt able to trust the department more. The chief hates to feel odds with the family of the murder victim. He doesn't know how it happened, but he can see that the Goncalves family feel mistreated by the cops, and they do not trust Thompson and his team either. That's upsetting to him. I will say that in my conversations with Steve, that's not entirely true. They really like Nye, N-Y-E. I can't pronounce Bill. I think his name was Bill. That could be just the science guy that I'm thinking of. Well, anywho, Nye, I can't remember his name. They liked him. They liked him a lot. I don't know about their feelings about the other folks. To say anything outside of that, I know that they like Nay. All right, let's see. Victim's family think they are owed information, and by law, they do have some rights. But to protect the investigation, they can't be told everything. It's not a perfect system. The chief knows that. And he's upset that the Goncalves family has articulated how upset they feel about it. So he's upset that they've expressed their frustrations. I don't know, man. There is such a thing as a First Amendment right, February 2023. It's around 8 p.m., pitch black, when Ava Wood hears a knock at her front door at her home at 718 Queen Road. She installed a Ring camera after the murders, and she can see a man standing there. He's dressed in a Moscow PD uniform. She doesn't trust anyone or anything. He knocks some more. Eventually, she speaks to the camera. Who are you looking for? He replies, I'm here for Ava Wood. Ava had 3 new locks and an alarm system installed after the murders, and now she unlocks and opens the door. He hands her an envelope. You're being subpoenaed for the state of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger preliminary hearing in June. She has never been subpoenaed before. This is the Bryan Kohberger case. She asks, who is it from? The officers answer, the defense. Ann Taylor, the defense. Do I have to show up? She asks. Yes, he tells her. It's illegally to disobey. As soon as he's gone, Ava slams the door and tears and phones her parents. In March, Ava told her dad, do a Zoom with Taylor. Her dad is a lawyer. On call, Taylor home. It says Taylor homes in. I think it's supposed to mean Taylor homes in on something Ava told the police the day of the murders. On Friday, October 14th at 1 a.m., she heard somebody climb up the metal steps to her apartment, which are across the street from 1122 King Road, and try the door. You could hear the jingle of the doorknob, and it's a finicky doorknob, she said. But the door stayed closed because Ava had a deadbolt put during her junior year. She told police. She now tells Taylor at that time she looked on Snapchat to see if any of her friends were in the area, saw one Mason Bangman, and texted him to ask him if he tried to let himself in. No, he said. So Ava asked him to check the street. She watched through her window, and as Mason and a couple of friends walked into view, he texted Ava that he couldn't see anyone. Ava went to sleep. She didn't think about it more until the murders. And then she wondered out loud to the police, was the murderer the same person who tried to get into her apartment 4 weeks earlier? So Ann Taylor wants to use this, right? Obviously, they have some of Bryan Kohberger's locations, right? And I'm assuming the argument is that they know where he was that evening at around that time and that he wasn't there. And they're going to try to use that information that at one point somebody did try to break in and it was just across the street from where the victim's resident is, so that must be the perpetrator in some form or fashion. You know, that's basically the information that they were trying to get out of her, was that. Goes on to say, Taylor asks Ava a lot of questions. How well does she know Maddie, Ethan, Kaylee, and Xana? What kind of people were they? Did the roommates ever fight? Did they ever leave their house unlocked? Did I ever attend their parties they had? How close was I with Dylan and Bethany? We were all in the same room at the police station. Did I know anything prior to the police being called or showing up? Did I know anything while sitting outside? When did I find out all 4 of them were dead? Did I have any knowledge of Kaylee or anyone having a stalker? Did I hear anything that night? What did I do the night before? Why was I outside that morning? And how did I get wrapped into this whole situation? Taylor apologizes for putting Ava through this, which is decent, Ava thinks. Who else has received these subpoenas for the preliminary hearing on June 26? 2 of Jack Decor's housemates, including Adam Lauda, the guy in the corner club, received them too. So too is Ethan's friends Peter Ilgoria. It was Ethan and Xana until the end of the Sig and Kai party on November 13th. Unlike Ava, Adam and Peter can't try to contest the Simmons because they live in Idaho. In April, filings show that Bethany was subpoenaed by Taylor because Bethany lives in Nevada. It's being agreed she can interview there instead. How is that fair? Ava, the California resident, wonders. She writes Taylor's office asking if they will at least pay for her travel and accommodations. They will. She's back in home in California a few days later when she hears the news that she doesn't need to do it because it's already been, they did a private secret grand jury. Some interesting questions, though, that Taylor had asked. I guess, did you hear anything about that night? What did I do before that night before? Just trying to pull holes, you know what I'm saying? May 11th, 2023, Emily Aldant is already in town for her graduation when she gets the email summons from Bill Thompson. She's convened for a grand jury and needs to testify. No one can know. Hunter Johnson received the same summons. The only people they tell are their moms, Karen and Jessica, who are in their graduation. So Hunter and Hunter and Emily end up going out there. Emily into a interlocutor is Ashley Jennings. Emily is nervous answering the questions. There are times she screws up and starts over. When Emily does find herself in front of a jury, she's grateful for the preparation. They ask her the same exact questions. She rehearsed and she answers them smoothly. Tells them about the events of November 13th. She and Hunter don't know who else Thompson called for the grand jury, but Emily suspects Dylan and Bethany may have testified on Zoom. Emily has played her part. I'll call you when I need you, but meanwhile, I want you to get on with your lives. That was Bill Thompson's parting message to Emily and Hunter when they head back to Boise. It has a little bit of a insight. Hunter is an athletics coach at a Centennial High School in Boise. So you at least have that's awesome, man. Congratulations on that position as an athletic coach. Let's see. May 22, 23. Bryan Kohberger keeps his eyes forward, fixed on the district judge John Judge, who has taken over the case after the indictment. Ms. Taylor, the judge says, is Mr. Kohberger prepared to plead for these charges? She rises, yes, Your Honor, will be standing silent. Now, it goes on to say something to the effect that Ann Taylor is a very practiced criminal lawyer and Bryan Kohberger knows more about criminal law than your average suspect. And that was from another lawyer in that area who was unaware of the whole standing silent thing. You know, if it kind of alludes that may have been a Bryan Kohberger thing. Maybe he knew about it. But she being Ann Taylor, has used it now in another hearing or another case with Skylar Mead. They stood silent as well. So just kind of food for thought there. You know what I'm saying? It goes on to say, the first is there were going to be negotiations around a plea deal. Few people believe that is the case here. I didn't hear about any plea deals before the defense asked for one. Everything seems to indicate that Kohberger wants his moment of fame. Kohberger is reported cares greatly about the PR ramifications of his case. He watches TV coverage as much as he can in his cell. Steve Goncalves complains publicly and often about Kohberger's privileges. I agree. But it is, I guess, confirmed that he did have certain access to certain things. May 12th, it's the Friday before graduation and the eve of the 6-month anniversary of the murders. Deedle, as Maddie called her paternal grandmother, Kim Cheeley, is proud of her daughters to come up with the idea. She's excited to go to Moscow that evening with the Laramies and her son, Ben Mogen, and other family members to spread word about Maddie May Day. She got cookies and a note about the new holiday for the Moscow police officers and the university staff. We wanted to thank the police department. I feel they've done an amazing job. However, it goes on to say that Deedle is gratified until that is nearly 2 weeks later on May 25th, Maddie's actual birthday. On that day, she reads the Idaho Statesman that the families of Maddie Mogen and Kaylee Goncalves have filed a tort claims notice with the city of Moscow and the University of Idaho, the Idaho State Police, and possibly, it is suggested but not confirmed, WSU. Shannon Gray explained the families have filed what is legally required within 6 months of the original incident to reserve the rights to sue. They haven't sued yet. In May, Steve phones Stacy Chapin to tell her about ahead of time that he's going to be filing a tort against the cops university. He explains there's nothing against you, and he means it. It isn't even against the police in his mind. He's creating a layer of protection for Kaylee and Maddie. This isn't personal. Stacy doesn't take it personal, but she is quite upset on behalf of the police and university. Deedle is devastated. It broke my heart. She is mortified as she reads on to discover that the Goncalves family filed theirs on May 2nd and 3rd, but the Mogen family filed on May 11th, the day before she showed up to Moscow with the cookies and everything else. The Mogen family designation wrongly insinuates that she's part of this. She wants to set the record straight. She would never consider suing the police or the university. But Kim doesn't want to alienate Karen and Scott Laramie. That's Maddie's mom and stepdad. So she calls a statesman. She speaks to an editor and tries to explain she'd like to be separated from the Mogen family in future reporting. She doesn't get why the Goncalves family seem to be making so many decisions for Maddie's family. She's puzzled about why Maddie's ashes are on the mantelpiece alongside Kaylee's, but she also knows that is what Karen wants. I don't know. You know, that I don't know. Everybody's just hurting. You know what I'm saying? August 1st, 2023. It's over 100 degrees when Jim and Stacy Chapin arrive at the U of I campus. They're dropping off Maisie and Hunter for the start of the fall semester. What they haven't told their children, because they don't want to upset them, is that after they settled in, they have another stop to make. Opposite of the Kibble Dome is the nondescript building that has no AC or electricity. This is everything Ethan left behind at 1122 King Road. Jim is reluctant to go, but Stacy insists, damn it, I'm going to get my kid's stuff. The dean, Eccles, has thought long and hard about how to make the hideous experience as easy as possible on all the parents. We had old desks and we brought in tables and staged it kind of like a garage sale, Eccles said. We didn't want them to have to worry about opening boxes and being surprised. The Chapins walk into the room labeled kitchen to see if there's anything of Ethan's in there. Then they go into a room marked 4, which contains belongings of Xana and Ethan. Some of Ethan's stuff is spattered with blood. It's upsetting to see it, unsurprisingly. Given the heat of the building, it smells rank. Now, I told you guys a while ago, a long time ago, that I had seen some stuff that was at the crime scene. That I'd seen, not the crime scene, but I had seen things from the crime scene that were at the crime scene during the time of the crime. And the reason why I was able to determine that was because of the blood splatter that was on the items that I saw. The items that I saw, I believe, I don't know, but I would probably say 99% sure were in Xana's room. And so, that's why I told you guys that I had believed that what Howard Bloom had written, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Howard Bloom here in a second, but what Howard Bloom had written, oh gosh, I think I may have lost where I was going with that. Oh yeah, no, I remember that it was like one slash or something of that nature, and it was to the neck, that was actually accurate. And the reason why is because the type of the splatter that would have been indicated of that. It's not a squirting splatter, it's more of a coughing. And blood in the lungs or in the throat would cause something like that. And so again, I feel bad for the families. I don't know why they were opted to take that home. Maybe it slipped. I don't know. It was hell. I will not lie. It was hell, Stacy said later, but she takes what she needs. Going through Ethan's stuff is only part of today's bittersweet experience. Ahead of the trial slated for October, just 2 months away, the court released 1122 King Road, meaning both the defense and the prosecution teams have no further use for the terms of evidence. In February, the school announced that it would be torn down. The house would be torn down. The Chapins are in favor of the house being demolished as soon as possible. They have 2 kids that still attend University of Idaho, and Hunter can see the house. Hunter Chapin can see the house from his fraternity home. While the Chapins have no interest in the judicial process or the efficiency of the system, Steve Goncalves is on a mission. He has journalists and local sources in the FBI to help him with research. And on the Goncalves family Facebook page, he refers to himself as a private investigator. I don't think he did. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not. I've been on the page. I'm not on Facebook a lot. Like, if I am, it's probably Marketplace, looking at car parts. To be 110% honest with you guys, but I don't. I believe he said he hired a personal investigator, or a private investigator. But I don't know. Maybe he does refer himself. Just interesting there. From the data Steve receives, he becomes increasingly sure Maddie was a target. As far as Steve can see, Kohberger liked Maddie's photos on social media. He liked Kaylee's too, but always in joint photos of Maddie. Yeah, I think so too. And I think the biggest clue is Murphy. And I've said this a couple of times, guys. I think Murphy is the biggest clue as to who is the perpetrator, or who the target was. Because if you look at the house and you're walking in, I wish I had the link up. I'd show you guys. But you walk up to the 3rd floor. The first door you get to would have been Kaylee's room. He doesn't go there. He goes directly into Maddie's room. Now, he does eventually open the door for Kaylee's room, and the reason why I believe that is because of Murphy. Dylan said that she heard who she thought was Kaylee, which both the prosecution and the defense believe it was Xana because Kaylee had already lost her life. She could hear who she thought was Kaylee, which was Xana, going up the stairs and down the stairs with Murphy. And when she was going down the stairs with Murphy, she heard her say, "Someone's here." So in order for her to go up the stairs with Murphy, Murphy would have had to have gone down the stairs on his own to Xana's room initially. And so what other information do we know? We know that Xana was on TikTok until 4:12, and the altercation in her room, audio-wise, don't start until 4:17. That's about 5 minutes later. So my assumption is that Bryan Kohberger parked in the back around 4:07 and a half. He got into the house probably by 4:09, maybe 4:08. I don't think it would have taken very long. Based on the book, they never locked the back sliding glass door, so it would have been very easy for him to just walk in and walk upstairs. Now, I think he goes into Maddie's room first. I think that's the intention there, because had he opened Kaylee's room immediately, Murphy would have then ran downstairs out of fear because of what was going on next door, ran down into Xana's room, and it would have been a lot earlier than 4:12, right? So what I think happened is he went into Maddie's room. He sees two people there. He takes out Maddie first, and then he viciously attacks Kaylee because she probably wakes up during this. And in efforts to silence her, he attacks her. Now, he probably doesn't know if that's Kaylee. That could be Bethany. That could be, a neighbor. It could be somebody that's visiting. It could be a lot of different people. It's dark. Didn't sound like he had a light with him, from based on the description of what Dylan said. It didn't sound like he was walking around with a flashlight looking around. So it was pretty dark. There's a good possibility he just saw that there were two females in there and wasn't sure which female was there in the room with him. So then he goes and checks on Kaylee's room. And that's when Murphy gets out. He opens the door, and I think Murphy runs right through him, right by him. Runs downstairs and runs into Xana's room. Xana's on TikTok at 4:12. She puts the phone down. She probably maybe needs to put on something, maybe a shirt or something. I don't know. But she then goes up the stairs and then runs back. The whimpers and the altercation, it starts at 4:17. So maybe she sends a text message. Maybe she says something like, "Hey, your dog is down here, Kaylee," before she decides to take him upstairs. But the altercation starts around 4:16, 4:17 is from what we understand from the audio from 50 feet away. That's a good amount of time. So in my opinion, I think after he opened the door of Bryan Kohberger and Murphy ran downstairs, I think he hid up there. I think he hid up there, and he was waiting to see if Murphy was going to come back up the stairs, if he was going to bring somebody, if somebody was going to wake up downstairs, which somebody ended up, going out there and checking. And so I think Murphy's a huge like piece or clue of like, all right, this guy really did go into Maddie's room first, skipped all the other rooms. And, I think maybe perhaps it was exhaustion. Maybe perhaps he didn't know if Dylan called 911, but I think those are the reasons why he spared her. I think there's a good chance that if Xana doesn't come out of that room, and let's just say she was asleep that night, I think there's a good chance that Bryan Kohberger probably walks out of that room only if taken 2 lives, but I think he was interrupted, and why he didn't attack Dylan, don't know. Sounds like she got scared. She was looking for her tase gun, so she probably locked the door. I wouldn't be surprised if he jiggled the doorknob or something. I mean, obviously she didn't hear that, so it's a possibility, but maybe an improbability. Not very probable, but who knows? I think more than anything, I think it was because somebody saw him, somebody heard him. They could have called the cops. They're on their way, and he needs to get out of there as fast as possible, which is why he's hitting out of it like crazy. All right, let's see. This goes on to say, Steve wants to figure out how Kohberger appeared to know the layout of the King Road house before entering it on November 13th. He is strenuously objects to in July when the university announces the plans to demolish the 1122 King Road too quickly. Technology changes fast, he said. So you never know if they discover some new scan or some kind of new phone technology or whatever they want to go back in there and retrace steps. He has a point. Months down the road, there will be back and forth between prosecutors and Kohberger's defense debating on the accuracy of the model in the house that would be used in trial. And after they were supposed to have, and I think it says it here, but after they were initially going to demolish it and they held it off for a little bit, they actually did go back and do some 3D scans for this dollhouse, model house that they got for the case. So yeah, he's absolutely right, and I 100% agree with him. They should not have torn it down. I don't think that the jurors would have ever been able to walk through it if that would have been the situation, right? Let's just say they would have gotten to trial. I don't think that would have ever been the case, that they would have walked it because there was stairs missing and things of that nature. But Steve's right. More technology and things like that could definitely open up a door for more evidence. Shannon Gray puts a statement out from the Goncalves to the effect that the Kernodles and the Mogens are united on this point. Dean Eccles understands their frustration over the house, but his hands are tied. University administrators are worried that the house is not safe. Investigators tore out piece of walls or floors, and there are wires hanging out. I mean, you have somebody out there. You have an officer out there. Nobody's supposed to be going in there to have these issues, these problems. I think that's a BS excuse. I think it's because of the optics of the house, and they felt that it might affect their bottom dollar when it comes to recruitment and families coming into the area. Because check this out. I think majority of them, it's 2025, 2026. It's happened in 2022. So about 3 years ago, a lot of these individuals that were there have graduated or moved on. And so the turnover rate is really, really high there. Not having it there, isn't a forefront in the minds of the family members that are bringing their kids here, who are expecting them to attend University of Idaho. So to me, it's more about the bottom line and the bottom dollar than it has anything to do with it being unsafe. Eccles is concerned there might be some sort of disruption when the Goncalveses arrive on campus to pick up Kaylee's belongings. And that's because they were so anti knocking the house down. The Goncalves family comes quickly without Gray and without drama. They take their time looking through Kaylee's things. By the end of August, all 4 victims have gone through the stuff. The Kernodles do it remotely. August 18th, Kohberger is clean shaven, hair neatly trimmed, and dressed in a white t-shirt, striped tie, and a gray jacket. He enters the courtroom through the side door, takes a seat at the defense table where he and Ann Taylor appear to chat too easily, almost if they're discussing the weather. Sitting next to the gallery as Christy stares at him. She wants him to look at her and make contact. Her sister, Tammy Butts, really wants him to look over. Tammy is wearing a black t-shirt on which it says in yellow and white lettering, "Justice for Kaylee," hashtag Justice for Kaylee, Idaho House Bill 186, shots fired. I remember somebody wearing that. I remember it was worn outside of court. I obviously the cameras inside of the hearings and the courts weren't focused in on the people that were in the pews, but I'm assuming, because I don't know. I mean, it sounds like they're claiming that she wore it to a hearing. Steve said nobody wore it in a hearing, but outside they can wear what they want. So I don't know. Tammy's t-shirt, a photograph of her wearing it later, posted on the Goncalves family Facebook page, caption, "It feels good to be gangster." Reminder that Bill Thompson has to put death penalty on the table. So yeah, they did post that, and that was afterwards, and that was not in the courtroom when they had the picture of the shirt. If Kohberger sees the t-shirt or the family, he doesn't react. Kohberger's expressions stay fixed. His attorneys will later argue in court papers this is due to his autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. And Taylor wants the state to hand over to her the precise IgG methodology and they use to construct Kohberger's family tree. The issue is moot because they have Kohberger's DNA from a cheek swab, and it's exact match to the DNA on the knife sheath. IgG work was complete. It was simply gave them a lead, and that's 100% true. This was one of the things that I had debated with on Truth and Transparency. Ms. Vargas, who was the IgG expert for the defense, had made an appearance on Truth and Transparency, And then I was invited to come on the show. And unbeknownst to me, Miss Vargas, the defense witness, was another surprise guest. And my questions with her, because she was explaining all the science, they didn't want to get into the Bryan Kohberger case because she was obviously under a gag order and things of that nature. And I didn't want to violate that. But 100% honest with you guys, I'm not a scientist. I have no idea what any of that stuff means. My deal was there something done improperly or illegal that could get it thrown out? Now, there's something called the fruit of the poisonous tree, right? Fruit of the poisonous tree is if something is obtained illegally, that anything that comes after that and through that is thrown out. So you have Bryan Kohberger's DNA on the knife sheath. Now, you have this road, right? There's the DNA from the knife sheath. They have created a profile with that DNA. Now, this is where you have a split in the road. You have that profile with the STR. So there's the STR DNA profile. One part goes to CODIS, and they couldn't figure anything out. And that stays there. It stays in the database. The other road that it branched off to went to the IgG. From there, they created a SNP profile and a family tree of individuals who are somewhat related to Bryan Kohberger. Now, if something was done at that point illegally, the only part of that branch of that tree that gets cut off is after the STR. So the STR still exists. And so let's just say they used the platform they weren't supposed to use. Okay, so what happens with evidence that was used or obtained illegally? It is no longer used against the person. They can't. And anything found after that, they throw it out. So when it comes to Bryan Kohberger, the STR profile was created before the SNP profile. So that's when you cut off that SNP profile and all those other things, the STR profile still exists. And you can still find avenues to test Bryan Kohberger's DNA to it. Now, the SNP profile was never admissible in court because they don't test Bryan Kohberger's DNA from his mouth to the DNA on the sheath. All they did was take the DNA on the sheath and create a family tree and say, hey, based on this family tree, based on where they live and all these other things, this is who we think your guy might be, but it's not a guarantee. And so because it's not a guarantee and because it's not a match 1-for-1, it's merely a tip, and you can't use it in court against Bryan Kohberger. It's like a lie detector test. If Bryan Kohberger took a lie detector test and he failed it, well, I mean, that just tells the investigators he's more than likely the guy, but it doesn't mean you can use it in court. Can't apply it. There's nothing from that you can use. It's inadmissible because it's not an exact science, so to speak. And so same thing here. The IgG didn't point at Bryan Kohberger in the sense where it's like, all right, we know with 100% certainty that this is Bryan Kohberger's DNA, like the STR profile comparison from the buccal swab on his cheek. That was a 1-to-1 direct comparison. So that was the difference. And when I was talking with Ms. Vargas, I asked her, I was like, hey, so what can be done to the SNP profile that would retro back to the STR profile? And I was asking her in several different ways, and so that I can get the answer that I wanted to walk them into a corner so that they couldn't come up with some sort of former avenue. But like, oh, well, there's this or there's that. So I was like, all right, is there anything that's done with the DNA? Is it collected? Is it actual DNA that's sent to the lab, or is it a series of numbers and letters and things of that nature? And we're going down that avenue. And then in the end, I was like, because they're kind of laughing at me. And then I go, what I'm trying to get to is the fruit of the poisonous tree. I could care less about the science. What about the fruit of the poisonous tree? What effect does the SNP profile have on the STR profile that would have it thrown out? And she's like, there's not one. And it was an awesome moment, and we never saw Ms. I don't think that's why, but I don't think I ever saw Ms. Vargas testify for the defense again. So, but yeah, that happened. I think I had put up a clip of that not too long, quite a while ago. It was a while ago. I'll see if I can find it. Maybe I can make it another clip. All right, let's continue this. For the next 2.5 hours, the courtroom becomes Taylor's theater. At least that's how Steve sees it. How are you allowing her to become an expert on the stand and not even cross-examine her? He complains privately afterwards. And he's talking about Bill Thompson. This is another situation where Ann Taylor had a witness up there and don't cross-examine. In fact, the only time he ever crossed anybody was when he was like acting like a lawyer for the defense. There's no stalking and you know it. And like, I was like, what are you doing, man? That's the only time I ever saw him cross. I mean, he may have crossed others, but a defense witness, I think that was one of the few times that I may have seen. All right, let's continue. So this goes on. When you look at the two lawyers battling, it almost doesn't seem like a fair fight. Thompson is retirement age and looks it. Taylor is in her late 50s, young looking and blonde. I don't really agree, but she is blonde. I would say they both look like their age. I look like my age. I'm not passing for anybody in high school either, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think either one of them look very young. She was quick on her feet and she's aggressive. So when the disappointing, predictable news that Kohberger's waiving his right to a speedy trial comes down the pike 5 days later on August 23rd, Steve is prepared. It's a reminder, Steve says, that it's essential that the Goncalves family is there in the courtroom for every single hearing. The next chapter talks about Stacy Chapin, and I think she was at a place called like Crime Con, and she ended up having a speech. It was very beautiful, and a Q&A session, and she talked about her son, and that's in here. That's in here. I recommend you guys go in and reading that. November 13, 2023. On the 1-year anniversary of Kaylee's murder, the Goncalves family didn't go to the vigil in Moscow. Instead, they sit in their living room and on their black leather couch, familiar now to America's many true crime sleuths, and give TV interviews about Kaylee and their frustration with the excruciatingly slow and opaque legal path to justice. We went from being the victims and becoming actively involved, and that could make a difference, Steve says. They tell their interviewers that they do have some proof that their advocacy matters. For one thing, 1122 King Road is still standing. And on October 31st, the FBI re-entered the home and created a new 3D map of the crime scene. Because of the gag order, it's not clear to the public what drove the agency to do this, but it's undeniable win for the Goncalves family. I knew in my heart what was best for those girls and Ethan, and I knew what is best to keep that house around. Until they did more, Steve said to Brian Enton of News Nation. There will be a point when I'll be like, let it go, but that isn't now. Steve then toys with the idea of pursuing a federal case based on Kohberger having crossed so many state lines to commit the murders. Sources at the FBI have told him that it might be a possibility. Steve knows it's a long shot, but that he's going to explore every avenue. For the Goncalves family, nothing is off the table. Our motto is don't be a victim. Don't ever be a victim. And I knew about the possible charges there, that if Bryan Kohberger somehow got off, that there's a chance that the FBI was going to pursue him, mainly because of the stalking aspect and following and those type of things. But yeah, they were going to come after this dude. You know, he wasn't going to get away with it. That's for sure. All righty. December 28th, Demolition Day is finally here, despite the Goncalves' best efforts. Last night, Shannon Gray released a statement from the Goncalves family with the headline, "Please stop the demolition on King Road." The Chapins have not commented, nor has Ben Mogen. Behind the scenes, Olivia, who is back in California and due to give birth to her fourth child shortly, has been trying to get her parents to back down and let it go. This is not the hill you want to die on, she told them. We will have other more important battles. On the other hand, Alina Smith, the co-founder of the Idaho Case Discussion Facebook page, goes into great effort to join the protest. She's flown in from Texas, arriving at 1122 King Road long before dawn, but she cannot get close to the house. The police tape everywhere. They had it blocked off over that nobody could get through, she said. And the other media, there's no one around, not even protesters. They put warnings out to a good week or so ahead of time, these little billboards everywhere, that if you think you're going to show up and protest, we're going to arrest you on the spot. When did it become illegal to protest? You know, when did it become illegal to protest? I don't like this. I don't like it. I mean, I'm not a fan of most protesting, to be honest with you, but I'm also a fan of our Constitution. I'm also a fan of us having as many rights as we can. And I don't understand why they have this threat going on that if you protest, we're going to arrest you. When did it become illegal to protest? You know what I'm saying? I don't like it. I don't like it. They scared everybody away. The demolition was scheduled at 7 a.m., but the crew started 2 hours early. So they're like, hey, we're not going to give these people an opportunity. We're going to tell them that it's at 7, but we're going to hit it at 5. That way, if they come try to protest, there won't be anything there to protest. Earlier in the month, the university said for the third time that they plan to knock down the house on December 29th. While the students were home for the holidays, U of I President Scott Green told the Idaho Statesman, while we appreciate the emotional connection some families and the victims may have to this house, it is time for its removal and allow the collective healing of our community to continue. That quote really stung Olivia. Olivia said, yeah. I can see. I mean, it's not just about healing. I mean, you got to fix it, right? You got to finish it. It's like if you had a broken bone and you're like, I'm just going to cast it, even though I might need surgery, and then the cast. You know what I'm saying? There's a time and a place for everything. And I think that the time and the place for that thing to have been demolished, that house probably is around now that he's pled. I think they should have kept it up. That's always been my stance. On December 20th, Christina and Elena did a TV segment with News Nation, Ashley Banfield, to talk about the controversy over the demolition. And when Elena gets to Moscow, she tells Christine that the trip is proving to be good PR for the page. Got a couple of starred chats. Let me see what they are real quick. We got Donna, the newest member. Thank you. Midwest member for 6 months. Kathy with a with 99 cents. I apologize. Thank you, Kathy. We have Birdie 284 with a 199. Thank you. The conspiracy guy about Fry was Justin, 199. That sounds familiar. I honestly stayed away from it. Like, I heard the first part of it, I was like, this is ridiculous, and I turned it off. I mean, a lot of those things is the way I work with that. All right, February 28, 2024, Steve is praying as he takes a seat in the gallery of the courthouse. Let's get a date. The Goncalves family are attempting to set a trial date. It's beginning to feel like Groundhog Day. Ann Taylor seems to be winning every tactical battle. Each time Taylor is the star of the show. She's on her feet, talking, raising questions more often than other lawyers in her room. Thompson barely says anything, and the judge, as far as Steve can see, bends over backwards to accommodate Taylor. Last month, Steve, Christy, and Shannon finally held an in-person meeting with Bill Thompson. We beat up on Bill Thompson a little bit, Steve said. On Friday, judge asked, what can I do to make sure that we get this case going before 2025? Thompson said, you got to start setting dates. And at the end of the court, what did he do? He didn't set a date. Oh, my gosh. D. Fuentes comes in. Hey, Daniel, try again for consistent, authentic coverage, and please let us know about your next book club pick, and we'll name our club. There you go. I might do that. Thank you, Dee. Let's see. John Judge and Thompson want to set the date for March 3rd, but Taylor pushes back, managing to sound simultaneously calm and exasperated. Death is different, Taylor says. The words punch Olivia Goncalves in the gut. Taylor continues, as a capital case. I've heard the court say the court only wants to do it once. And now they want to speed things up. She pauses. I need discovery. I need all the discovery. When I ask for something, I need to get it rather than have to go back and ask again. Kind of like Bryan Kohberger's call detail records, right? Those are the ones you were asking, 24 times? Like 23, 24 different times where you're like, we want those things. And Bill Thompson's like, we can't give you what we don't have. And then you finally figured out, which you would have thought, Cyril would have known this, being that he worked with AT&T for how many years? He said 15, I believe is what he wrote down. I've been working with AT&T for 15 years, and he didn't know the call retention time frame for AT&T at the time of November 13th, 2022 was only 7 days. He wasn't aware of that. You know, I don't understand that. You know, and the crazy thing is, he was on a podcast, and we had broken it down because he was on his own podcast talking about call retention timing for advanced timing records. He was like, oh, well, you got to make sure when they get it and when they don't, because some places hold it for 3 months, some a little bit longer. And I was like, man, sounds like you were on top of it. Why did you miss it in the Bryan Kohberger case? You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. People then, you know, people will say things to get when they're getting paid. Let's see. And I'm not trying to be mean about Bill Thompson. She says, looking directly at her former boss. I'm just not. I think he's trying his very best. She blames the problem on the agency like the FBI, who she says handed things over piecemeal. It's like if you wanted to play 52 card pickup with 100,000 decks of cards and throw them in the air and have to go figure out how to put them together. She wins the hour. No trial is set. Judge adjourns with further hearing scheduled for May to discuss the venue change. Steve can barely believe it. So we are stuck in a situation. We have a judge and a prosecution that is supposed to be defending us, acting like the biggest victims, and just keeps making us feel like a victim over and over again. He just sits there, just lets her hit him, and lets her dictate everything that's going to happen. It's so frustrating. Steve feels like he's going to have to do something, anything to change the momentum. He's going to have to keep doing his own digging. If no one else can to get a break in the case, he will. Discovery hasn't closed. If we do find something that they don't have, then they're going to have to put that in the case. And I don't care if they don't like the fact that somebody else found it that isn't part of Idaho. I don't know what kind of world we live in where we hide the truth. I agree, you know, and a lot of that also has to do with like the gag order and stuff. The next chapter is on Chief Fry retiring. Nothing new there. May 20th, 2024. The fight between the two Facebook page founders began with Christine texted Alina to ask if she was promoting a new case discussion page about the recent controversial suicide of Myrtle Beach woman Micah Miller, whose husband was a pastor of a local church. Alina replied that she was. Christine responded that she couldn't believe Alina had started something without her. Alina explained that she had joined the Crime Scene Collective as part of the Victims Advocacy Foundation because she believed it would result in paid work, which she desperately needed. I mean, she puts in a lot of hours, right? And then, you know, I don't ask for donations and stuff. I'm not the type to say, hey, please give me some super chats or things of that nature. And nothing against those that do. That's just not me. But I'm also, I have other jobs. I do a lot of other things, right? I have a few jobs, to be honest with you. And I'm also enrolled in college. Shh, everybody needs to know that. But yeah, I'm going back to finish. And so I do a lot of stuff. And fortunately, I get, you know, I have multiple streams of income coming in. But if that wasn't the case, and I was a person that was traveling and those things and had expenses because of that, you know, that would definitely be a huge part or component to it. You know, I understand that because, and that goes for not just this case. This goes for anything. You know, one of the folks that I watch is like Tim Pool, and he used to go all over the place and film protests and stuff. Well, plane tickets, hotels, all those things cost money. Plus, you have to survive. You have your own bills to pay. So, you know, if your main profession is creating content, or in this situation for Alina Smith is, you know, victim advocacy, you got to get paid for that too. You know, I don't hold anybody like negative if they get paid. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you're throwing out lies for a conspiracy to get paid, that's a different story. You know what I'm saying? All righty. So let's continue. Alina was worried that the podcast project may never happen, but Christine did not understand. Christine deleted Alina from every single page they started together. Just like that, childhood friends were done. but so was everything Alina had worked on for years and years. Christine posted on Facebook page her side of the story, Alina's betrayal. The post garnered 28,000 views and almost 500 comments. Not all of them positive. What does this have to do? Some members asked, with this tragic murders of 4 innocent in Idaho. Kaylee Goncalves was one of those members. She messaged Christine that she felt what she had written on the page was inappropriate. Olivia felt very sorry for Alina. She knew firsthand how hard Alina worked. Olivia could see how consistently and often Alina had intervened and on the page and squashed some of the more outlandish conspiracy theories and victim blaming. Fearing that the page might be deleted suddenly in the midst of the fracas, Olivia joined another smaller page, University of Murders Case Discussion, as a backup. A couple of days later, Alina became its first administrator. It goes on to say, privately, both women regret that the page focus turned away from the victims and toward their messy personal affairs, but it's too late to mend fences. That's unfortunate. It seems like they were really good friends. Maybe one day those things, bygones can be bygones, and they can heal together and forgive, and maybe not necessarily forget, but forgive and move on. You know what I'm saying? I don't know Christine at all. I've never talked to her. I do know Alina. She's been on the show, and she's going to be on the show probably in the end of the week, maybe in the beginning of next week. She's never said anything negative to me about Christine, just that they had a blow up or whatever. So hopefully things can, they'll be all right. All righty, May 30th. Yet again, Steve thinks that he is hearing a complete waste of everyone's time. Today, Ann Taylor kicks things off by interrogating Brett Payne about the surveillance video canvas of the white and the Elantra. She asked him to take her back into time on December 23rd, 2022, when she received Kohberger's phone records for the 48 hours around the murders and then issued a warrant for 6 months prior to it. See, this is what we were talking about the whole call into the Lance timing record. She's been asking for that over and over again. Here it is on May 30th, 2024. It's clear from the matter of fact, the way Payne answers Taylor's question, he's describing the workings of a well-oiled investigation. All the different teams and experts do what they do individually and then click together. Taylor's looking to exploit any gaps in the machinery. She hones in on the fact that investigators didn't create a central inventory of the thousands of hours of video surveillance. Rather, it was stored on a different thumb drive. And because he was focused on the video that was relevant to the PCA, the videos of the Elantra in it, Payne doesn't know where all of it is. Taylor wants the video they have of I-95, the main route back to Pullman, because the Elantra doesn't appear on it. Steve can see that the defense attorney is looking for any sort of hole. Worse, though, the technique plants seeds of doubt. Taylor is poisoning the audience by saying there's no connection and there's no video. Steve said so when she starts doing that, there's a curse word. I'm going to try to stay away from them. I started getting impatient with Thompson, saying, she's kicking your butt in there, and you need to stand up for us. Thompson's trying to push back. He told the judge the characterization that we are just consciously withholding information to the defense is utter nonsense, which is true. I mean, this is, again, the advance call timing records that they were trying over and over and over again. And so, yeah. I got a couple of super chats real quick. Yes, I got that one. Morier comes with $9.99, and Grichinario says, "Go Browns! Joe me in a string of gifts from Browns fans. We're good people." Yeah, I'm a Steelers fan. You're a Browns fan. We can be civil. We can be civil. It's been a good rivalry for us. It's been a good rivalry for the Steeler fans. I enjoyed it. I've actually seen the Browns and the Steelers play 2 times here recently. I saw them 2 years ago, I want to say it was, and then the year before that. Last year I saw the Steelers and the Ravens. This year I'm going to be seeing the Steelers and the Bengals. So I'm finally going to be able to see all of the divisional teams this year. All right. Maybe Thompson is being strategic, or maybe stalking has. Okay, so he goes on to say, Steve doesn't think Thompson is doing enough to manage the public perception. He is upset with how Thompson questioned one of the defense's expert witnesses on April 10th. You acknowledge falsely that Mr. Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. That's false. You know that to be false, Thompson said. Defense expert confirmed the information was false. Steve was totally confused. I think we all were. I know I was. I was like, man, what are you talking about? You alluded to that in the PCA that he was there X amount of times. Come to find out in the state of Idaho, for it to be considered stalking under their laws, the victims would have had to have been aware that they're being stalked. There would have had to have been a fear. They would have had to have been an annoyance or harassment. But either way, they would have had to have had some sort of knowledge that they were being followed around. The fact that he didn't scare them during that time or annoy them or harass them by Idaho laws is not stalking. But he was surveilling them. He was watching them. Maybe Thompson's being strategic, or maybe stalking has some legal definition that Steve isn't aware of. But as far as he knows, Steve knows a lot at this point. Kohberger for sure looked at the King Road house several times before the night of November 13th. Steve has gotten a hold of a video of a car idling outside of it for 15 minutes. He isn't positive, but it looks similar to Kohberger's. He's fairly certain from his own research that Kohberger showed up at the U of I cafeteria. Interesting. The U of I cafeteria. And that he was looking up restaurants with vegan options in the area. There's only one, Mad Greek, where Maddie and Xana worked. So how can Thompson say there's no stalking? Maybe there's some rule around the term stalking. Maybe where you had to physically communicate. I don't know. But I do believe these victims were selected. He studied them. He hunted them. Every father and mother understanding is that he stalked them. I agree. I 100% agree with that. Let's see. Meanwhile, in court, he's got to sit through more mind-numbing technical testimony from Cy Ray, a cell phone geolocation data analysis, who says essentially there's stuff missing off the record. Bryan Kohberger's AT&T timing records. And the missing data, about 2 to 3% of the location data of Kohberger's phone, could be important. Yeah. If they would have gotten the advance, if they would have known that Bryan Kohberger was the suspect within 7 days of November 13th, that you would have been absolutely right. Absolutely right. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. In April, Taylor filed papers saying that Kohberger would use an alibi defense. We all know what it was, stargazing at the Walleye Park. What kind of half-baked alibi is that, Steve said. I mean, stargazing, give me a break. Why doesn't Thompson try to get it thrown out as evidence? Steve doesn't get it. Not at least on the night of the murders. He's discovered that there was very little visibility. Steve hears through the grapevine that during the closed sessions, the judge reams out Taylor. And we'd have liked to have seen that. That's what I heard too. I heard that Judge really laid it out on her during one of the closed sessions. I think Judge, how can I put it? I think he was overly cautious when it came to things. He didn't want anything to be overturned. He didn't want them, if the death penalty ended up being the punishment, he didn't want that to be overturned later through appeals and things of that nature. I asked DT to ask Steve about the video. Which video? The one of the 15 minutes? I'll say this, guys. I've asked about videos and stuff like that. If I don't get an answer or the answer is no, I don't press it. And I'll say this, I don't have access to it, and it may not be until the FOIAs come back that I will. June 2024. It's a beautiful day when Stacey Chapin gets a call from Bill Thompson's office. Next week, there's a hearing in which the judge will set a trial date. It will likely be summer of 2025. But after months of agonizing, Jim, Maisie, and Hunter decide they do not want to be there. They do want to be there to represent Ethan, especially at the opening when the jury first convenes. They also want to be in the courtroom to support Hunter Johnson and Emily and all of Ethan's and Xana's other friends who would likely have to testify. That would have been hard. I mean, I know that would have been hard. All right, so this is a good one. Chapter 134, Broadheadsville, Pennsylvania, summer of 2024. As Connie Saba is shopping in a Rite Aid in Broadheadsville, she sees someone in plain relief aisle who looks familiar. She stops, and it's someone she used to work with. And then she realizes it's Michael Kohberger, Brian's dad. Connie, he says, is that you? How are you, Michael? She replies. He seems very pleased to talk to someone. My heart goes out to Marianne, Connie says. How is she? Michael tells her that his wife doesn't talk to anyone on the phone, and we lead a very quiet life, he says. We don't go out, and even when they are home, he says they don't feel safe. People, he tells her, are watching our house. What people? Government people, he says, leaving her slightly confused. Huh. Why would they be watching his house so many years later? Because this is almost, a year and a half, almost 2 years, summer of 2024, almost 2 years when the murders occurred. Why would the feds be watching them still? Now, I do know that they were subpoenaed to a federal grand jury in Pennsylvania for the death of, oh gosh, her name escapes me. I can see her face. I just can't remember her name. Donna Smithers. You know, he had that. Maybe they were looking into more. Then he says, you know, Bryan didn't do it, right, Connie? Connie thinks, she says, the Bryan I know wouldn't do it. She wants to be supportive. Then Michael seems to remember he hasn't spoken to her since Jeremy died. We were both shocked to hear Jeremy died, he tells her. Marianne wanted to call you, but she felt unable to. Doesn't explain why. Why wouldn't she? Does Bryan know Jeremy died? Bryan was away, Michael says. He doesn't say where. We didn't tell him for months, but yes, he knows. When was Bryan away? I mean, he used to go to college, but he was on a road trip. Are they trying to cover for him for something else? Because he would go back and forth between DeSales and Northampton. Even in this book, it talks about how he used to commute. What this tells me is that Michael Kohberger has no idea or didn't know where his son was when Jeremy died. It's interesting. He goes on. Bryan was away, Michael says. He doesn't say where. We didn't tell him for months, but yes, he knows. Bryan wasn't the same after the drugs, he adds. He wasn't the same person. Connie nods, but she thinks even on drugs, Jeremy had remained a sweet and good-natured. But Bryan was framed, Michael says. Connie is startled. Framed. Someone planted the knife sheath, he tells her. The police didn't find it when they first went in. There were a lot of drugs in that house and a lot of people around, but only looked at Bryan. You know how he likes to drive around when he's nervous. All right, so let's break that down real quick. Somebody planted the sheath. And he's saying the police didn't find it when they first went in there. So he's assuming that the persons that, I mean, I'm just deducing, but I think he's trying to say that the police planted it. There were a lot of drugs in that house. Sounds like he was listening to some of these Kohberger YouTube channels. Michael Kohberger, are you listening to the Kohberger channels? I mean, these are straight out of the Kohberger channels. Connie doesn't, but Michael tells her he always used to get in the car and drive at night when he needed to think and had some fog. He had to get away just think. Or when he couldn't sleep, he would just drive around. Michael adds, things will come out in trial. Everyone will see. The two go down memory lane, reminiscing about Jeremy and Bryan's childhood. So what this also tells me is that this man was desperate to get things off his chest, to say things, to talk, to communicate. So when you have a guy like Howard Bloom, who's investigated this case as well, and who went out there to Pennsylvania and spoke to Bryan Kohberger's father's friends and family members, I think we can kind of start to see that it's probably more likely than not that Michael Kohberger was opening up to people. I mean, he did this in the middle of a store with somebody who hadn't seen in a while. And it didn't even dawn on him at first that the last time they spoke, their son was still alive. He was so engulfed in his story and getting things out, you know, what his feelings were. He didn't even realize that. She goes on to say she can emphasize with how the parents must feel in a situation like this, given the things Kohberger's tried to do for Bryan. If it was my child, she later said, I'd probably be the same way. But I'm going back to this whole Jeremy thing, right? Because where was Bryan Kohberger when this happened? Does Michael Kohberger know where he was? Doesn't say where. I mean, doesn't mean he doesn't know. Doesn't mean he does know. Wouldn't it be weird? How weird is it that Bryan Kohberger decides to go away for a little bit, doesn't go home, right? And during that time, somebody he's very close to that he did drugs with, overdoses. Bryan is a manipulator. This is my opinion and my speculation. If Bryan had something to do with his friend's death, maybe he wanted to get high. Maybe he wanted to go and have a binge with him or something. Maybe it wasn't even something that was purposeful, right? Maybe he just lied to his dad to say, hey, I'm going out. I'll be out of town for a little bit. And then he's hanging out with people he doesn't want his family to know he's hanging out with. Doing things he doesn't want his family to know he's doing. Maybe something happens while he's gone or while he's there. I think it's sus too. I think it's very suspicious that the time he goes out. I mean, it's kind of like some of these other like serial offenders. Rex Humerman. It's kind of odd. Every time his wife and family went on a road trip, somebody died or something happened. Right. This is kind of the opposite. He's telling people he's going on a road trip or whatever. I don't know what he told them. And then something happens while he's not at home. So I don't know. You know, and somebody put that almost no these are investigated. That's probable, especially if the guy has a history, right? He's been in rehab, in and out, those type of things. It just sucks because it sounded like he was clean again. August 21st, 2024. The New Vandal Healing Garden and Memorial for the dedication ceremony. So Stacy Chapin is there. For the first time since the tragedy on November 13th, the representatives of all four families are together in Moscow. The Goncalves sit at the front of the left, facing the podium. Ed Mogen is behind them. The Chapins and Kernodles, represented by Jasmine Kernodle, and a couple of Xana's aunts sit to the right. James Fry stands in the back, almost unrecognizable in his jeans. The mayor is there too. So are most of Moscow PD. They are standing guard. There are still some true crime maniacs around who are unhealthily obsessed with the King Road murders. Occasionally, they surface on campus. That's weird. That's weird. I don't know. I guess I got some standards. I wouldn't pretend to be a student to try to get somebody to talk to me. I don't think they'd buy it either. They saw me be like, sir, the teacher's lounge is that way. Today, the Goncalves family is not on the defense. In fact, they are fully supportive of Dean Eccles and the university. Christie is even wearing a T-shirt emblazoned with the Vandals strong. Steve Goncalves chats amicably with Chief Fry. He shakes Jim Chapin's hand. And Dean hands him a folder of Kaylee's work. Steve and Christie do several interviews with local media. They say that, yes, it's hard to be here. They are glad to honor their daughter. They think the healing garden is a wonderful idea. The Goncalves family will post on Facebook that they found it deeply emotional, special day. They have buried the hatchet with the university for now. It's hard to say which part of the most moving. Maybe the moment of silence for Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee. Maybe it's when Drew, Ethan's friend and fraternity brother, speaks about each of the four victims, consciously describing their distinct personalities in a way no one will easily forget. And I'm going to read that aspect. So this is what Drew said. He said, do more of what you love to honor Kaylee. Spread that love with random acts and kindness for Maddie. Be silly and do something spontaneous and fun to honor Xana, and tell stories with an abundance of laughter to live life like Ethan. Very beautiful. August 29th, the hearing has decided to change the venue lasts over 6 hours. Steve has gotten the impression for months now that Bill Thompson doesn't really want to run the risk of having the trial in Moscow because of the university. The problem, Steve thinks, is that some of these people seem to put that university first ahead of the victims. They all went there. Thompson said in court it could be better to avoid having a trial when the students are around. That's why he wants to have it in the summer. Steve was not pleased when he heard that at all. I mean, that's the kind of weird way to present 4 murders to a judge, he said. He also worried that the university timetable would give Ann Taylor some excuse to push back the trial beyond next summer. So even though he feels like it should be a local and that it would be one heck of an inconvenience for him and Christie if it gets moved all the way to Boise, he also figures it might not be all bad to get out of the cozy cabal that is Moscow, and he'd welcome a new judge. I agree with everything here, and I had been saying that when Thompson came out and said that we want to have it in the summer because we don't want to have to interfere with schooling, it's like, dude, that's a bad mistake to put that out there. That is bad, like 100%, because now you've just shown your hand to the defense, and a defense which we can look back and see had a lot of stall tactics. All they had to do was just say something. Oh, we're not ready. We'll be ready for, fall of 2024. And then you're going to have Bill Thompson. Well, we don't want to do it. We're going to have to move it all the way back to the summer of 2025, which ended up being. But there would have been that avenue to continually move it back because you're only looking at a specific certain amount of months. And I'm glad that they moved it. On September 6th, in the form of written decision, the bad news arrives. The judge writes the defense has met rather low standard and the basis to move the venues. Goncalves posts a reaction on Facebook. Family is incredibly disappointed in the judge's ruling, granting the change of venue. The only good thing about this decision, it will be judge's last decision on this case. On September 12th, the Idaho Supreme Court ordered it to be moved to Boise, Ada County, under the jurisdiction of new judge Stephen Hippler. Steve says that Judge Hippler is no stranger to capital cases. He's known to be strict and stern. Good. 100%. 100%. I mean, night and day difference. Like if I would have been concerned had they left it in Moscow, to be honest with you, and Judge would have been the judge. I don't think he would have ever confronted Ann Taylor in the same manner that Judge Hippler did. I don't think he would have ever moved the process up. I think we'd still be waiting for information, waiting on everything. I think Bryan Kohberger would have had a better chance of an acquittal or a hung jury if it was Judge. September 15th. This is September 15, 2022, but I'm pretty sure it's 2024. Bryan Kohberger has flown 300 miles south of Boise and booked into the Ada County Jail. September 28, 2024, Olivia and Christy feel that they've hit a wall. They're going to need housing in Boise for 3 months. They learned that there is no federal, state, or local assistance for families having lost a loved one. The only option they realize is with input from Jack DeCour's aunt, Brooke, is to start a Goncalves family GoFundMe page. Money pours in, but the trial date remains uncertain. His first hearing, Judge Hippler says he's leaning away from the June date set by the previous judge because he thinks it'd be hard to pick a jury. Given family vacation schedules, Thompson suggests May. Taylor suggests September. Taylor hits her usual theme of being overloaded with discovery. But in a sign, perhaps Judge Hippler has less appetite for delay than Judge. He tells her she needs to get it done by the deadline he sets. 24 hours in a day. And if you use enough of those hours and enough of days in a row, you'll get it done if you have to. The judge delivers a stern lecture to both teams. At the oust, I'd like to say I'm happy to be here, but I start with an untruth. I do expect and this will come as no surprise to you, for you all to get along. I understand the stakes in this case are as high as they possibly can be in any case, but you are professionals. So, as I said earlier, he was obviously watching the trial beforehand. On October 9th, Judge Hippler issues a ruling. The trial will start August 11th and run through November 7th. The Goncalves family finally feels optimistic. Once they go to trial, Steve hopes that the events will be anticlimactic. He has reason to be hopeful. Steve's FBI sources have told him that when the agency is involved in a capital case, they secure conviction over 93% of the time. The odds, therefore, of getting a conviction in a quadruple homicide, well, you do the math. A lawyer for the FBI has told Steve that in his years of experience, he's never seen a case with DNA has been found at the crime scene and it didn't lead to a conviction. A piece of evidence like that is insurmountable. So now the stage is set for the drama and will begin in August. The moment Emily, Hunter, Johnson, Bethany, Dylan, Jack, Decor, Ava, Adam, and so many other victims circle will likely have to take their positions in the witness box and relive the horrific events of November 13th. As to whether Bryan Kohberger will be found guilty or acquitted, that's a story for another time. That's it. It's the end of the book, guys. We got through the entire book. You know, I'm going to read this last part. It's the, is it epilogue? I hope I said that right. The orange trespassing sign is one indication that something terrible happened here. Patch of land where 1122 King Road once stood is now strangely peaceful. Green sprouts, springs of the earth, birds sing, students come and go from the houses and dorms all around. No one stops to gawk anymore. There's nothing to see, just a small field that's overrun with weeds. Most of the students now on campus are different, younger generation. Have no memory of Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee. They have no memory of the parties, the laughter, and the life that once blazed here. They have no memory of the deck where the inhabitants drink coffee and post it for Instagram photos. But a stone's throw away, the 4 plaques in the healing garden ensure that no member of the Vandal family, past, present, or future, will forget the names of the 4 innocents who lived this piece green happily and hopefully. Their names are Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kate. It's a good book. You know, there are some things I questioned about it. You know, I didn't like it appeared, I don't know if it was, but it did appear that Goncalves family took a couple shots in the book, you know. But I think that they got a lot of information out there, and I think they got the police on the right track too. You know what I'm saying? If it weren't for them, I don't know if they would have ever gotten the video from the grub truck. Maybe if they didn't lose it. I don't know if they would have. I mean, I'm sure they would have gotten some of the information, but there was some things that they, like videos and stuff, that the Goncalves family were trying to tell them to get. Like the book said, that they didn't get in time, and it got rolled over. But outside of that, man, I thought it was a really good book. It focused a lot on the victims. I highly recommend buying it, guys, and going through it and reading all the stuff I didn't, because I probably read to you guys about maybe half of the entire book. You know, there were some whole chapters that I skipped by because it was about personal information about the family members and what they were doing on certain days and how they were feeling. And what I wanted to bring to the table was the stuff that we thought we knew, stuff we speculated, the questions that were there, the confirmations. And I think we were able to get those out of this book. All right. So if you guys have any questions, please put a few stars in there. I'll answer a few for the next 10, 15 minutes or so. Let's do a little Q&A. I want to scroll up a little bit. In Idaho, premeditation is just seconds before. Taking the knife to the house is, I can't read that. It's too parend. Thank you so much, Jody. I love your channel and coverage. Thank you for keeping your channel classy, unlike others. I appreciate that. How is it possible Kohberger plead guilty to premeditated murder? We don't even know for sure if he knew that Kaylee and Ethan would be there. This is pure insanity. Well, he was stalking the house, right? He'd been there since July, 23 different times all that night. And it sounds like Ethan was there quite a bit. In fact, they called him an honorary roommate in one of the pictures. Even the book describes saying that they don't know when he comes and goes. He's just always there. You know, when he leaves, he's just there. So Bryan Kohberger watching the house that much, I'm fairly positive he knew Ethan was there. I think he knew who Ethan was. I don't think he cared much for Ethan. He didn't follow him on Facebook or on Instagram or any of those things like he did allegedly the other victims of the house, the females. But I have little doubt that he didn't know that Ethan was there. Let's see. Premeditated could be yeah, but I mean, I think there's more there. You know, you look at the fact that he stopped using his credit card on November 10th or after November 10th. He started doing the forensic deleting stuff at around that time. That was all before the murders. And so one could say that he was doing that just to try to hide it or cover his tracks. I'm on rewind, but the person you're talking about was Dot, and they're a horrible person for making up the whole story. I heard about Dot too. I couldn't believe people bought that, to be honest with you. Let's see. I hate that people are requesting their money back for the GoFundMe because there won't be a trial now. Well, I don't know if anybody's requesting their money back, but I do know that the Goncalves family put out there that they would return anybody's money that requested it as long as they can. Epilogue. There you go. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thought it was a good book. Yeah, I thought it was a good book too. It's my second book that I've read on this case. I'm proud of myself. I'm not really one that likes to read a lot. For me, honestly, when I read, a lot of times it doesn't stick. I have to read it more and like multiple times. Sometimes I read things backwards. And with this book, it was wildly entertaining, and so I didn't have to do that. Now, I did end up reading this book multiple times. I read it all once. I read it as we went along. So I would read the chapter, and I would underline what I wanted to say. And then many times before the show, I would reread those chapters again, the underlined parts, and just to make sure that I didn't want to add or subtract any of those things. And then I read it for the third time on the show. And so that's kind of what I've done with this book here, getting me ready. His parents should have. Okay. Great show, Dan. Thank you. Read the ebook cover to cover. Very much worth it. 100%. I highly recommend everybody go out there and check it. He premeditated at least one of the murders before entering the house because that was the purpose of entering. Premeditation for the other murders was formed after entering. That's true. What do we know about the impact statements from the families? I know that they've been working on them. I know that Steve has been trying to get accurate information for his. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best to go live during the hearing. I have to work that morning, so I'm going to try to get out of it. I'm going to see if I can take a day off and do that, but I won't know until tomorrow. But I'll let you guys know tomorrow if I'm going to be able to. Regardless, I get off a little early, so it'll probably still be on, and I'll go live as soon as it's over, or if it's still on, as soon as I get home. Did you see here that Steve G says the impact statements were to be addressed to the court, not BK? Isn't this weird? The king spake to the perp directly. I don't know. I know that the Goncalves family are definitely going to be there. Thank you. Yes. It is Wednesday. It is on Wednesday. The book is definitely worth reading. I 100% agree. It's worth reading. There's a lot of good information there. A lot of good stuff. Like I said, one of the last things I took about this when Bryan Kohberger's father was talking to Connie Seba is that he clearly was wanting to talk to people about it, and he was just gushing out information. And so this kind of makes me believe more so a lot of the information that Howard Bloom had was probably accurate too. But all righty, guys. Well, that's going to do it for me. I want to say, whoa, I got to start. Jules comes in saying, my opinion, Taylor knew something the day she took that other DP case. Oh, yeah. Thank you for your $4.99. I 100% agree that she knew ahead of time. 100% agree she knew ahead of time. All righty, guys. Well, I'll be back probably tomorrow night at the normal time. Might have a guest, might not. We'll see what happens. I know there's some things that have come out as of recent. I think one of the things was his essay. I'm gonna see if there's anything else that is populated, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow. But until then, guys, I'm out of here. If you guys are Steeler fans or football fans, I'll be on a little bit later on tonight at 9 p.m. on a YouTube channel called the Steel Curtain Network on a show called The Steelers Hangover. So check me out there if you guys want. If not, I'll see you guys tomorrow here on the DT Show. Peace out.